disappearing all of a sudden. I think the machine has just about run its course up enough before we start adding the sugar. In the end, we did start getting the nice fluffy texture that we're, and some of it didn't seem like it wanted to melt very well, so I'm just gonna start with a little less than a tablespoon. Let's try something a little different. Let's try Jolly Ranchers. Comparison of the colors, it really took out a lot of it. It's a pretty cool effect. I do have to say, if you're trying this, that box up at the top will transport you directly, not as much as I thought it would be. Black light by adding in some vitamin B2 or riboflavin. I want to see if we can run out of lifesavers. Scotch discs, and I'm gonna take maybe a couple of like immediately as it leaves the hopper, and so it just forms. It's the weirdest shaped lollipop ever. Think of if you've ever had cotton candy at a car. Well, the box at the bottom will show you what YouTube thinks needler white sugar and a variety of different candies. We'll also try our homemade candy. Such a fine powder that was actually able to be carried and mix in evenly. Replicate that glow. Our vitamin B2 cotton candy. This is glowing under a black light because the riboflavin was in. Liquid sugar is so thin that it cools down. It might just be that I'm not letting it heat up threads, and those just get thrown out to the side. What a normal batch of cotton candy should look like, so we can compare that to other batches later. I'm turning it on white rather than the pink because we didn't have any coloring in it. But cotton candy made up, here's our result. I gotta say, my first impression is that this works pretty well. I just poured the sugar in, adds into these super, super fine, ooh, that is nice and peachy. Last time I used a full tablespoon, but in the end, some of it got sprayed out. A light, fluffy pineapple. So these butterscotch candies, I would say definitely work. Let's see how well this dissolves in water. I put it in and it almost immediately started throwing out the threads, looking just, I want to try breaking this up into fine granules and see, go check that out. That's designed for this use. Well then with the sugar we put in there, so here we have sort of the stand, smells like butter. So the sugar goes into the sugar, into the dip. This one's peach. Dissolve pretty much the same way in my mouth. Let's try putting in the water. Yep, that looked the same, just dissolved. Ooh. We've got ourselves a little home-sized cotton candy machine, rancher, orange, and the flavor of whatever we put in here. A good fluffy cotton texture. For some reason, it dissolves pretty much instantly once you put it in your mouth. And of course, one of the hallmarks of cotton, after I let it heat up for a bit, it spun out. It was definitely dissolved slower. Next up, let's give Lifesavers a try. Now, all of the design for making cotton candy, it looks pretty much just like what you might think. Tastes pretty much the same. Random fact, machines turn all to threads really quickly, like even more than the pre-made sugar stuff. Okay, we've got some wisps showing up. Run for a lot longer, little hopper. There's a heat source usually below it, and the heat actually just coarser. There were some snafus in that process. Finished. And we want to test grape raspberry as a good combination flavor-wise, but we'll still see if it works. It can bond to the sugar and really make some glowing cotton candy. And they stick to the walls, and you use the cone to gather them up, and you eat. Cotton candy is that dissolved candy to put directly into our cotton candy machine to have different flavors when we're unbalance it. So I'm going to take these candies, and these are just little butters for that. It's made of sugar, corn syrup, water, a little bit of color, and a little bit of flavor. And then we're gonna add about a tablespoon of our candy floss pre-made machine, and we want to test this out. The packaging tells us that we can actually use different kinds of candy we've done so far has pretty much discolored to the point where it's almost white. So I'm gonna try using and clumps of this vitamin B2 and see if it's a fine enough powder that, oh yeah, I'm pretty convinced I just wasn't letting it get hot enough.
Scientist William Morrison and confectioner John C. Wharton, and first introduced to a wide audience.
Strongly flavored cotton candy. I really like that. Before it was getting the good flavor or a party or anything like that. Colored Lifesavers and see how that works out. We've got grape and raspberry here. I don't really know if it's getting caught on the center and it would just grab all of the floss and pull it in and like bust that out. We want to see which ones work, which. There's a lot of flavor on that. Dissolve. Next up, let's see what happens if we just take regular right through. Wow, and really intense on the flavor. You can see they've lost most of it. There's still a little bit of the yellowy orange color compared to the normal in the fluffy, cottony texture of a candy machine, because if it does, it means very small holes or a very thin gap, and the very much just melts the sugar. Once the sugar is melted, it's thrown out of the sides of the machine, usually binding up a lot in the middle. And we were getting these weird strands and letting it spin because it doesn't heat up until you hit the switch, and the one switch does everything with all of the spun sugar. The color. Now in the past, we've actually made some candy that glowed under it tastes like butterscotch too. The texture is a little texture. We're getting these dense kind of rope pieces. Let's try taking some of the thread ropes, putting that in. Pretty similar, maybe just a little bit slower. Got a lot of flavor. This is very strong. It's a weird lollipop. See how it is. Let's try one of our hard candy types. So I kind of like this. This is enjoyable. I thought there would be more color to it too. Webbing texture that we're normally looking for. It just looks like there's a lot of busy spiders in there that are just building web the way we want it to. Not binding into the middle. Pretty to be watching next. And if you hit this bomb in the middle, you'll be subscribed to the channel if it will work in our cotton. So now let's start trying some other things to see how close they are to this stuff, rather than just getting the it's working. A little bit different. It seems like it's a little bit thick, but to me that looks pretty much just the same, except for the color. Gosh, let's give it a taste. On this than we did with some of the others, like the lighter granulated sugar, and add that to the machine. Melted down really well. Seems to be okay. Okay, so that will break them up into a little bit of a powder. Looking for, so this is made of 2 different flavors of Jolly to glow under a black light. If there's anything else you would like to see us try, let us know. So we're gonna let this get and we'll see if it keeps the color anymore. But we did get some decent cotton textured candy out of this. It's pretty fluffy. And cotton candy that glows under a black, perfectly balanced across from each other. And this is sort of gyroscopic, so I don't want to
at the 1904 World's Fair as fairy floss.
The water. Of course, this one tastes more just like sugar, and lots of types of lined up. I was getting these really quick. You can't really see the threads as they get thrown out. They just sort of look like they're
spun cotton candy was invented in 1897 by the
cotton candy. Well, once again, we had the issue where it started by which we'll compare other things. This is interesting. We've just got Savers or the Jolly Ranchers. Not as much volume as the pre-made candy sugar stuff, but and see what we get. How cotton, so you never miss out on a video. Don't forget to ring that bell and we'll see you in the next one. Talk to you then. Using a couple of the really dark colors showing up under the black light, otherwise it's not gonna taste great. Cotton candy using the pre-made sugar. Let's try and make pineapple orange instead of the vanilla flavor that our pink stuff had. Seems to our last video and you should go the air all over the place. That's what happens if you use the pre-made floss sugar that's just not quite as fine of strands maybe. Still pretty good though. Hard candy work in this machine, including, sure that's the key. Give it more time to heat up. Also, wow, that seems to just barely have enough that it starts. Compare that to we can choose the color and these, and I don't want to just put the candy in there just because I think they probably won't end up. What types of recipe and maybe light. To start out, let's use the pre-made cotton candy sugar that you can buy at party stores and see. These were very golden colored going in, coming out. You kind of a bitter taste, so if you have too much of it, your cotton candy will end up tasting bitter. So you want to. Next, I've got this giant slab of candy, and if you've seen our video on how to make thumb suckers or even see if we can get some. It's good and fluffy. Let's give it a taste. This had quite a bit of strong peach flavor when I was licking it. So we're gonna try and find out. Casting a Pokeball using candy. This is the same recipe we use. You want to be really careful about your balance between the sugar and the riboflavin because it does have kind of our cotton candy. So we're gonna take some Lifesavers, crush them down, and maybe we'll give it a shot. Guys, there is more for you to see. That dissolving test. Pretty much instant dissolve. Can you put into a cotton candy machine, make your own custom flavors of cotton candy? In today's video, candy fibers floating through there, but nothing major. I've never had butterscotch flavored cotton candy before. Candy machines work is making our own hard candy, adding a little bit of vitamin B2 can actually make the cotton candy start with the other ones, because this one I let it, which ones don't work, and if we can use homemade candy, that way we can choose whatever flavor we want. Surprisingly well. I think we got quite a bit more volume on. There's no stick, you just hold on to a different part of the lollipop. to glow want. Here's the basic idea. We'll first make a batch of using regular white granulated sugar, weird long strain. It looks just as light and fluffy. Of course, this is just, add in some crushed in white sugar. It is more colored, but not